Oh, what's good, y'all? Welcome to another episode of A Short Time with I am your host, Myron Butler, and welcome to 2020. Ecstatic to be here. Today, I'm going to talk to you about my top 10 NFL players of the last decade. We'll be back.
Whether you in a car, room, office, or tune, Myron in the morning got to talk for all the news. Sports.
Alrighty, I'm going to get right into the list. Top 10 players in the NFL of the last decade. Very, very tough to do. A lot harder than I thought it would be, for the main reason because a lot of players fall right into that in-between of the decade. Some players right in the 2010 or 2017. Some players got really good in like 2015. So it was really tough to really narrow this down to just 10 people. But I think I got a list for you all right here. Number 10, I got to represent where I'm from, Detroit City, Calvin Johnson. Megatron brought passion and heart to the Detroit City, the best thing that we've had since Barry Sanders probably. And what Calvin did in 8 seasons was amazing. But since it is just last decade, I narrowed it down to 2010 to 2015. And what he did in 5 years was absolutely amazing. I mean, Megatron stole the show, made Matt Stafford's job under center very easy for several years. He only played until he was 30 years old. He had 8,500 yards, 62 touchdowns. I mean, the guy was absolutely amazing. And I just think about what if he would have played until he was 33? What if he would have played a couple more seasons if the Lions weren't so bad? How great could Megatron have been on this top 10 list? I guess we'll never know. He rounds out at number 10. Number 9, I got the best cornerback of the decade.
Well, I'm the best corner in the game. When you try me with a sorry receiver like Crabtree, that's the result you're going to get.
Richard Sherman graduated from Stanford, and he really brought that prime time Deion Sanders nastiness back to the defensive cornerback position in football. He was coming out early in the decade saying, I am the best cornerback in football and you can't guard me. And when you do that and then back it up, it's absolutely amazing. Richard Sherman's got the most interceptions since he entered the league in 2005, 35 of those. And not to mention the Super Bowl he won, where they just massacred a Hall of Famer, Peyton Manning, and his Denver Broncos, 43-8. Held them to 1 touchdown. So absolutely amazing. Richard Sherman, number 9, leader of the Legion of Doom.
Boom. Alert the Legion. You better alert the Legion. LOP.
This is what they have done all season long, is just throttle opposing offenses.
Number 8, we got some respect for the big man up front. My boy David Schwartz said we got to look up and look out for the big guys. We got Joe Thomas from the Cleveland Browns, and he could have been number 1 if the Cleveland Browns weren't so bad last decade, and hopefully for the next decade as well. But Joe Thomas was amazing for the Cleveland Browns. I think it's a little plus when you think about how bad they were, and he still started 10,000 plus consecutive snaps. That takes a special kind of guy to, no matter how bad your team is, he's had 12 different quarterbacks under center. Every single snap and every single game, you can count on Joe Thomas showing up. And that's nothing but respect for the big man up front. Hall of Famer, first balloter, Joe Thomas at number 8. Number 7 on the list. You saw him just this weekend in the playoffs, finally making a comeback. He would be higher on my list if his last decade wasn't derailed by so many injuries. The Houston Texan, J.J. Watt, has had a great career, so many sacks, but as I stated, the last 3 to 4 seasons, J.J. Watt has stayed hurt. And that's the only reason he's not the highest ranked defensive player on my list today. But when healthy, J.J. Watt is as good as anybody else in the league. Freak of nature, mean, I feel like he'd be perfect to play for my Steel Curtain guys back in the day. I mean, just a prototypical defensive end. And, I mean, 96 sacks, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. What more can be said about J.J. Watt? Since 2010, there's been one receiver who's been the best receiver in football when suited up. And that's your boy Antonio Brown. Number 6 on my list, drafted in 2010, late rounder from Central Michigan, and he has showed nothing but work ethic and how good of a football player he is, as I said, when suited up. What he did for the Steelers, the big three, those guys were exceptional. 7 straight seasons with 1,000+ yards. Not to mention 75+ touchdowns, almost 12,000 receiving yards in just 10 seasons. If he would have been able to control his personality, I think, stick it out a little longer with the Steel Curtain, he could be more than just a one-time Super Bowl winner. Could have been a multiple-time Super Bowl winner. Now he's scratching his way to get back into the NFL or become the next rapper. Who knows? But for the last decade, Antonio Brown was the best receiver in football. And that's why he is number 6 on my list. For the top 5, this was very difficult. Very difficult to figure out who the top 5 are going to be. 5 slides in at Von Miller, the best defensive player on this list. Only difference between him and J.J. Watt, Von's been healthy every year. And what Von has been able to do is absolutely exceptional. He's got 25 forced fumbles, 106 sacks and counting, and he is a Super Bowl champion. You play to win the game, and Von Miller, you can count on him to come out and play his heart out every down. Von Miller at number 5 on my list. Number 4, I ain't going to say much about this guy. He has broken my heart too many times. Took a Super Bowl from my Steelers. He has hurt the Lions for years. Aaron Rodgers, number 4 on the list. I mean, you saw the 2 Hail Marys against the Cardinals, then against the Lions. You saw him beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in the Super Bowl. What more needs to be said? Aaron Rodgers would be the best quarterback in this decade if it wasn't for a guy wearing number 12. Aaron Rodgers is number 4 on my list. I still hate the Packers. Number 3, the best running back I have ever seen in my lifetime, Adrian Peterson. Man, he took the NFL by storm last decade, coming in strong. And yes, he was drafted before 2010, but he kept it up through last decade. Not to mention coming back from a torn ACL and in the very next season just having a career year, breaking the rushing record, all those touchdowns. I mean, Adrian Peterson is, in my opinion, one of the best running backs in NFL history. And I love that even later in his career, like now with the Redskins, you can still see he still has it. And I wouldn't be surprised to see AP play another 2 to 3 years at this pace if he can stay healthy. Adrian Peterson, number 3, the best running back I've ever seen. And obviously, last decade, one team extremely dominated the NFL, the New England Patriots. And since you play to win the game, I guess the top 2 players should be the 2 most winners. Number 2, I got Rob Gronkowski. Changed the game for the tight end position. There were a lot of great tight ends before him, don't get me wrong. Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez. These were all Jason Witten, great tight ends. But what Gronk and Tom Brady had, I think that's one of the greatest offensive punches we've ever seen as far as 1-2 matchups. When that guy played, he was an automatic touchdown. And he's the only guy at the tight end position to have more touchdowns than Antonio Brown. I mean, Gronk was amazing for the New England Patriots. Never lost more than 4 games in a regular season. His playoff record, he's 12-4 in 16 games, 12 touchdowns, 1,500 yards. Gronk was absolutely exceptional. He's so good, the Patriots are willing to beg him to come back again after he's early retired. So if Gronk can come back, Maybe Tom Brady has another championship in him next year. Who knows? But for now, Gronk's a future Hall of Famer. And number 1 on the list, yeah, has to go to the GOAT, Tom Brady. Stopped many Super Bowls from happening for my Pittsburgh Steelers. And he's the only player who is the best player in 2 different decades. And Tom Brady is exceptional. Yes, he was not able to get it done last weekend in the playoffs. Yes, maybe he might finally be winding down, but I don't think anyone needs to be convinced that Tom Brady has been the best player in football for the last 20 years. If it wasn't for Tom Brady, my Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin, would have a lot more Super Bowl rings. So, to the Patriot fans out there, Tom Brady, don't really like you, but I respect the greatness. I have to acknowledge that. And that's my top 10 list for the top 10 NFL players of the last decade. Who do you think? Did I get it wrong? That a terrible list? Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Let's share information. I'll debate you all day, but this is what I've got. Until next time.
Whether you in a car, room, office, or tomb, Myron in the morning got to talk for all the news. Sports talk.